All right, we're live. Check the mic after dark. It's getting late over here. Monday Night Football, overtime. Chiefs get the win to stay undefeated, 8-0, 30-24 in overtime. Turned out to be a pretty fun game, Sam. There was a Mahomes injury scare. Looks like he'll be okay. Looked fine after a little ankle injury that he played through in the majority of the second half. Bucs made a valiant comeback. They tied it at 24 with 27 seconds left, and then the decision of the game. Everybody's asking the underdog Bucs, almost 10-point underdog Bucs, to go for two. One play to potentially win it, and it would have won it. And they kicked the extra point, go to overtime. Chiefs march down for the game-ending touchdown. Kareem Hunt rushing touchdown to end it.
It's the classic end-of-game scenario, right? Isn't it? We talk about when you get into these situations, if you are the underdog, take the one opportunity, right? Take the one play that gives you a 50-50 shot, essentially, of icing the game, taking the lead, and then holding for, 30 seconds and getting the win, versus playing for overtime and assuming that because you're level now, you're level overall, right? You're not. You're still a 10-point underdog. You're still the worst team, theoretically. You have a much better chance of getting your 50-50 shot than you do of winning another period 50-50. Like, that's the reality of this. Instead, the Bucs play conservative. They play the kind of old school way of thinking. They kicked the extra point. They didn't at least give up a score before overtime, but then the Chiefs just methodically marched down the field and scored a touchdown. Game over.
First off, the fact that the Chiefs were up 24-17. It felt like the classic inevitable Chiefs. So it's like, all right, good job, Bucs. You hung around. Now the Chiefs have the lead. Spags on defense. They have been Chris Jones and Spags blitzing. Like, they're the best closers in the NFL, right? And really impressive by the Bucs. Baker Mayfield making throw after throw to get the ball down the field. They even had a 1st and 20 on that game-tying drive. I was really impressed with what they did, just to be able to get in position to have that decision.
Yeah, right at the start, Chris Jones did what Chris Jones always did, which is, now's the time to show up. Boom, immediate pressure, forces a holding penalty, 1st and 20, backs him up. You're like, that could kill the drive right there. It didn't. They overcame that. They made a bunch of plays. They also there's the decision whether or not you go for 2 points. In either case, they had left the Chiefs time on the clock to go and try and answer and get a field goal and win the game. The only reason there was time on the clock is because prior to butchering the decision to go for 2, they called a timeout randomly. Like, they butchered the clock management part of it. They get a nice gain to Trey Palmer, who gets down to the 1-yard line. There's 35 seconds left on the clock. Instead of chewing some time, they call a timeout right there. So now they're at the 1-yard line with 33 seconds on the clock. They, incomplete pass first, then they score on the second down. You've only taken 6 seconds off the clock to get into the end zone. If you had run up, ran a play, spiked the ball, whatever, you could have taken most of that time off the clock and dramatically reduced the chances that Kansas City would have had any time to answer whatsoever. In addition to, if you want to kick the extra point, now there's no time for them to answer at all. So I don't know. I think Tampa Bay made a balls at the end of that game, to be honest.
The one other thing, I mean, when you're communicating this to coaches, because we've seen John Harbaugh with the Ravens go for 2 all the time, and it's not just in an underdog situation. In his case, is this a 50-50 proposition or better? And then compare that to the 50-50 proposition that is then go to overtime, win a coin toss, which is legitimately 50-50, and then how do you stack up against the other team in a 10-minute quarter? And so how do you communicate that? Because, like, the Bucs and Todd Bowles aren't looking at this the way we are. We're like, hey, they're hurt. They're 10-point underdogs. They're lucky to even be here. Todd Bowles is not saying that on the sideline, right? As the head coach of the Tampa Bay Bucs, hey, guys, lucky to get this far. He's like, coaches are scared of, man, I made that one call. We lost on one play instead of trusted by players to play it out. But someone needs to convince the underdog coach, you're playing the Chiefs. Your chances are better of executing one play instead of an entire quarter. And that's what the decision comes down to.
that's as simple as it is, right? It's like, do you think the more plays you have against Kansas City, the more chance there is that Kansas City wins because they're fundamentally better football team. They're undefeated right now. You're 500. You have no receivers. They have receivers. Like in every capacity, the more plays you play this out. It's like if you run this simulation 10,000 times, Kansas City wins the majority of them, right? If you run the simulation one time, i.e., one play from the 2-yard line, you might win. In fact, you have a 50-50 chance generally of getting this done. So if you can't convince them of that, like you're wasting your time. It shouldn't be that hard to make a coach, even a coach of the team who's, proud of his guys and look, we're right in this. We've got it down to the wire. For them to understand that the more we play this out, the worse our chance of winning is.
Question in the chat: how many plays did the Bucs defense play? And I do want to touch on that and the way the Kansas City offense has been operating from Borkington, of course. It was close to 90. The Chiefs ended up with 35 official carries, 44 official passes, plus Mahomes sacked 4 times, plus negated plays. You're in the close to 90 range. It wasn't exactly what we saw in the Super Bowl last year against the 49ers, where the Niners were on the field at the end of regulation and then on the field almost immediately, right? Or just like back-to-back drives or back-to-back long drives really for them. But it was close. The Chiefs have this way because like the Bucs defense has been pretty bad over the last few weeks. It is funny that the 8-0 Chiefs right now don't pour it on. They don't dominate. They didn't really even dominate the Raiders, right? Who just gave up 40 plus to the Bengals. And they kind of offensively, because they're grinded out, kind of play down to these lesser defenses. Like think about the Saints, how bad they've been in the last month. The Chiefs just played them a month ago. They didn't put up a ton of points. This is the first time they've scored 30 since last November. But They do lean on you. They do grind it out. And that run game, by the way, after Mahomes got hurt, they started handing the ball off a lot more. They had no run game prior to the ankle injury. That O-line stepped up again, started moving people at the point of attack, and Kareem Hunt started running hard. He ends up with over 100 yards on 27 carries.
There's also,
Floyd Mayweather fight is a great. It is a great comp. The Floyd Mayweather technical boxer who just wins, but it's like you're not that exciting anymore.
Like this might be just what it feels like, but we've said for a long time, like the Chiefs do seem to be able to turn it on when it matters, right? Like the postseason, they don't necessarily play amazingly, but they step it up. Every stage of the way, they make the plays when it matters and other teams don't. So if you buy into that, again, it mattered in the final drive where they got one drive to take the lead and put the Bucs in a hole. It matters in overtime. Like you're putting them in situations where they're going to play their best football versus can you beat them on one play? Like, have you got something in that playbook for 2 yards that you think gives you a better than 50-50 shot of winning this game? If you do, you have to take the shot. You have to back yourself in that one play. Instead, they don't, and, they end up regretting it. But, both defenses, I think, made some plays. Like, the Bucs had a pass rush out of nowhere for a while. Like they got after Mahomes a lot, and Mahomes definitely was hampered with that injury. Obviously, he came back. He was apparently questionable dealing with an ankle injury coming into the game. Clearly, he jarred something on that ridiculous play, by the way, which is going to get ignored because he hurt himself on it. But his feel for manipulating defenders in the open space is unparalleled, completely ridiculous. He's running away.
That was the same.
He's scrambling.
Good.
Draws 2 guys to him. The second the 2 guys come off their guy, he just dinks it right over the top. Easy touchdown. Would have been completely, easy had he not janked his ankle at the same time he did it.
Yeah, he said he rolled his ankle. He looked upset about it, but seemingly it wasn't too bad. He wasn't able to move a ton on it. He made that play against the Bucs a couple of years ago. That was the same against the Bucs in prime time. Draw a defender in, flip it over. We mentioned on the preview show, I know the Super Bowl stands out in our head that the Bucs got the better of Mahomes, but Mahomes has really gotten the better of the Bucs in every game other than the Super Bowl. And it was
where his entire offensive line was a backup group.
They had answers, right? They had answers for everything that the Bucs threw at them. Methodical win, and then the others. The big story is DeAndre Hopkins, right? That you have the one play, because even in a game where Mahomes is throwing the ball underneath, he still has this special play. It looked like he was about to get sacked his third or fourth time, right? He doesn't get sacked that often, and he flips it up. Antoine Winfield's over there thinking he's got an interception, and the ball drops right into DeAndre Hopkins' hands. To me, that says trust. And Mahomes, obviously he has that trust with Kelsey. You see Kelsey tonight, 14 catches at 7 yards a pop. Kelsey can get open. He can't do much after the catch anymore. And maybe that'll show up in the playoffs too. Who knows? But right now he can't. Mahomes has trust in Hopkins, and that is changing things. Right now it's under pressure. It's not Kelsey. I can throw it up, and this guy's going to make a play. It's a dimension this offense hasn't had over the last 2 years. I know they've won the Super Bowl the last 2 years, but they still haven't had this dimension.
Yeah, you can see. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins can still play, and Mahomes can get him the football. That is going to be a really good combination. He's still devastating against press coverage. We saw that down at the goal line for that slant touchdown. He can still make contested catches. That is a really smart pickup. And it could have been even more. Remember the start of the game, Mahomes had an easy touchdown to Xavier Worthy, who just made an absolute mess of tracking the ball and stepped out of bounds instead of walking in for a touchdown. That, and they then got knocked out of field goal range, right? They got nothing out of that drive. That should have been 7 points on the board before anything happened. This offense is going to be a lot better with DeAndre Hopkins in it. Somebody there was asking why teams keep playing zone against this defense. Because the alternative is you play man coverage, you turn your back on Mahomes, and he scampers for 1,000,000 yards every play. He's one of those quarterbacks you can't turn your back on and play man coverage to and just forget him, because he'll be out of the pocket and taking 15 yards every single play. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, because there's more QBs able to do this, but knowing when to scramble, immediate recognition of man coverage. I would say over the last couple of years, you don't fear as many players, right? So maybe you do take your chances in man a little bit more, but you probably have to lose a defender to spy. And even the spy, we know that Mahomes, when he scrambles, is 1 mile an hour faster than the spy. So you have to play pristine up front from a gap discipline standpoint. When rushing, probably have to have a spy. So it's a whole thing. The Chiefs have a lot of answers. And again, if you remember the 2022 year in the playoff run, he could not move right on that ankle very well.
Right.
The O-line, not only they weren't just not giving up pressure, they were giving him massive pockets to work from. It was like they stepped up and said, no more pressure. It's not happening. Felt like it happened tonight, both in the pass and run game. It felt like this line, which is already good. I'm not saying they tried harder, but they stepped up and played well, and they found a way to win with the run game and then the complementary pass game off of that. That's how they moved the ball in the second half against the Bucs.
Yeah, I mean, because of the way he played on the ankle last time, where he literally couldn't move around on it, it seemed incredibly implausible that he was ever going to come out of this game based off just a twisted ankle. He was going to be back playing no matter what it took. And yeah, I think there's probably something to the offensive line being like, hey, guys, our quarterback can't move anymore. Tighten it up. No more. This is it. Play better, because we can't let him get hit again.
Last thing I wanted to highlight, I was impressed by Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, right? There's no moral victories here. They're sitting here at 500. And, again, I've highlighted on the show a couple times now, a tough stretch here. As the Falcons are seemingly pulling away in the South, the Bucs have to play the Chiefs. And then next week they have the Niners. They're looking at maybe being a game under 500, right? But Mayfield, with their third receiver, Jalen McMillan, injured on Friday, him out of the game. Cade Otton was the top target, the tight ends. So they kept feeding Cade Otton, getting the ball to Sterling Shepard and some key plays on that game-tying drive. Trey Palmer. I mean, Bucky Irving looked like he was trying to carry the team. I'm over here thinking he was going to have 200 yards. He only had 24 rushing yards and 10 receiving, but they were impressive yards, right? Because Kansas City's defense makes it so difficult, and the Bucs, man, they gave the Chiefs all they could handle.
Shepard, who was coming into this game dealing with a hamstring injury as well. You can make an argument that the top 4 wide receivers on this team are either out of the game or in some way incapacitated or hampered, and they were still making plays. at some point, like right at the start of the game, I mean, they couldn't move the ball quite a while, like halftime, something like that. Baker Mayfield's average time to throw was like 1.8 seconds, right? The solution, the adjustment to, oh, we can't do anything. We can't run the ball. We can't pass the ball was to, okay, the ball is coming out of Baker's hand immediately. We are just getting it out and firing it somewhere and trying to avoid that. That was really impressive. But then once Kansas City sort of did their, okay, let's win the game drive and put themselves ahead and the time was running off the clock, that game plan goes out the window. Then Baker's got to actually drop back, hold the ball a bit longer and try and find some deeper passes, and he still made those plays. So,
right.
Yeah, ton of credit to Baker, ton of credit for Sterling Shepard. Almost run out of the league at this point, finds a home again at his old college teammates' offense, and with a busted hamstring is out here trying to make plays for the guy.
I've always been a believer in Sterling Shepard. I mean, yeah, that you described it well. I mean, that's what I was most impressed about, right? It's like in those must-pass situations. And I'll say, as Baker Mayfield fans, when he came out in the draft, those first few years, even though he had some success with the Browns, in those crucial moments, Baker always seemed to fall short, right? He always used to come up short. All right, game-tying drive. All right, game-winning drive. Go get him. He did it one time with the Rams, right, when he got off the plane and played. But
right
with the Bucs, he's done a pretty good job. It went head-to-head with Houston in a loss last year where he was bringing the Bucs back. Like, he's done that pretty well over these 2 years with the Bucs.
Yeah, he has. And, there's some mistakes in there as well, which I think are always going to be part of his game. And to an extent, his opportunity to sort of win the game is going to come down to whether or not he gets lucky on the couple of times he makes a mistake in a game. But he did. Like, he made a bunch of plays. And I think it is worth reiterating that wide receiver situation. Like, that's not just you suffered an injury, you were without Mike Evans. Like, at least they're top three wide receivers. And if you say Sterling Shepard's like not 100% with a hamstring, that's the top three and one of the next two, depending on where you rank Sterling Shepard and Trey Palmer. That's an entire wide receiver core is out of the game or hampered with an injury. That's debilitating for a quarterback. Like that, we've taught that's the reason other quarterbacks have had crappy games and lost and looked terrible, and we've been out here making excuses for them, saying, "Well, what did you expect with that kind of injury list?" Baker looked pretty good despite that injury list.
Yeah, he did. So again, no moral victories, but I was impressed by the Bucs. I thought I was surprised that they came back to tie it. I think they're probably kicking themselves not going for two. I mean, look, you may have failed, and it would feel like, oh, we should have just played it out. Maybe we would have won the coin toss. It could go either way, but it's probably your best chance of winning as a 10-point underdog here.
I mean, I think that entire sequence, right, from the moment Trey Palmer gets tipped up at the 1 yard line, I think everything from that point on was an error, essentially, right? Including apparently the coin flip. You didn't win the toss, so everything from that point on was a mistake. Everything.
Whoever says tails never fails is wrong about half the time. They left Mahomes 27 seconds. I will say they made the stop in the 27-second drive. At the end of regulation, they at least did that. But the Chiefs matriculated down the field for the game-ending touchdown.
But they could have left him with about 6 seconds on the clock.
Oh, yeah.
If they just run the time down a little bit.
Just really quick, Chris Jones didn't have a sack, but it doesn't show it. There were certain plays. It was 3rd and 14. I put the screenshot out there. Within half a second, he's by the guard, right? And Baker ended up scrambling for 10 yards, but it didn't make it short of the first down, right? He just blows up plays. Like you can't sit in the pocket and pick up 14 on 3rd and 14 because he's in your face. There's a handful of those plays every game where he wins immediately off the snap and just blows it all up.
Yeah, I mean that was the first play, right, at the sort of the theoretical game tying / winning drive at the end. Like he immediately blew up that play. Baker got away from him and tried to make a play, but it came back for holding. Like that's you turn 1st and 10 and let's see what we can do in this drive into 1st and 20, and your chances of actually executing anything are a lot lower with 1st and 20. I mean, his ability to dial up those plays is TJ Watt-like. Like he's one of those few players in the NFL that does have that ability to just go, okay, I need it now. We're going to turn it on.
All right, Sam. Long week, good times. We started at 7 a.m. this morning, pushing close to midnight here. So as always, appreciate everybody for being here. Don't press the button yet, Sam. Don't press the button. I got a long outro here.
Okay.
Wednesday show. Are you talking Saints?
Yeah, tomorrow. Jason Fitzgerald from Over the Cap at 2 p.m. Eastern time. We are going to go through the Saints. How screwed are they? Is it different this time? Do they need to blow it up? Cap hell, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, so that'll be YouTube exclusive. We'll probably throw the audio in there for our audio listeners as well for Wednesday. And as always, we'll be here on Wednesday. If you're not watching the Wednesday show, you got to do it. It's my favorite show of the week. So tune in Wednesday. Check the mic, 10:30 a.m. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Hit thumbs up and subscribe on the way out.